Hello, everybody. I am Patrick Daugherty. Welcome to week 4 of a good football show, Fantasy Kickoff, served by Applebee's. I'm joined, as always, by John Daigle, Kyle Dvorchak, and Denny Carter. We're going to dig into all your lineup questions in just a minute, but as we do every week, we're going to take a spin through the news. And as is the case every week, the news includes the 49ers backfield. They got like 6 new guys in there this week. We don't know who any of them are. Now it's Trey Sermon week, apparently, John. And can we trust Trey Sermon, or does the 49ers coaching staff does not trust Trey Sermon enough? What is your comfort level on Trey Sermon, say as a plug-and-play flex, or maybe even a plug-and-play RB2?
You can trust Trey Sermon as much as you trust any fringe RB3, fringe RB4. Last week, of course, they had Patrick and Kerryon Johnson active, like we expect them to do again today, but neither saw a single snap on offense. It was literally Sermon for 12 touches, and then Kyle Juszczyk, their fullback, for a career-high 9 touches, even though he's been in the league 9 years, which kind of tells us what they think about Sermon this early in the season, at least. Elijah Mitchell already practically ruled out, but I will say for Sermon, if you are in a situation where you're forced to start him, and you probably have to ask yourself, like, does this guy have more ceiling than this other guy I'm weighing with him, is that the Seahawks have been absolutely atrocious on defense against running backs this year. And it's not just Alexander Madison and Derrick Henry the past 2 weeks. Even the Colts, Nyheim Hines and Jonathan Taylor, total 200 yards together against them. So that would be the positive spin for Sermon this week.
I thought you were going to say you're going to have to ask yourself, is this really what you want to be doing with your life?
You should do that too.
Kyle Juszczyk, John, real quick, does he have any PPR juice, or was that kind of like a 1 week fluke? I mean, we know he'll be involved, and we know he's always caught a few passes, but that role is going to be smaller this week, is it not?
Even if you look at models in like our DFS toolkit, he does pop like on FanDuel, for instance, because he's min price, but it's still pretty thin, especially because there's no bye weeks. If it were a slate where there are bye weeks, we can talk ourselves into it just to get the touches and the floor. But even with all the injuries, I can't imagine you're in a position where you need to start a fullback at your running back slot.
That's a good way to put it. Denny, I said the 49ers are one of these topics. I think we have led the show almost every single week talking 49ers running backs. Rams running backs are trying to catch up. Sean McVay said he thinks Darrell Henderson is going to play this week. You know, one of the premier fantasy games of week 4 is Rams Cardinals, but Darrell Henderson, he's played into the durability concerns now. He gave Sony Michel that opening. Sony Michel has run with it with a lot of carries, some empty carries, especially against a really tough Bucs defense last week. But who are you ranking higher in the Rams backfield, Denny, Sony Michel, or Darrell Henderson? And can we have flex trust in Darrell Henderson in this game, with a 55 over-under?
I think you have to rank Henderson slightly above Michel, even though, Michel acquitted himself nicely last week. I know he didn't end up in the end zone, but considering they were playing the league's toughest run defense, I think he did well. I think he will now eat into Henderson's, previously really solid workload in that LA backfield. I'm ranking Henderson a little higher, but man, it could be really ugly if you put him in the flex and Michel, splits 50-50 the work, and maybe Michel gets the goal line work as maybe the more natural fit for that sort of situation.
So are we going to get Joker-fied this week as Kyler Murray managers with 3 Sony Michel goal line carries? Conflating the two teams there. But are we going to be Joker-fied by 3 Sony Michel touchdowns? Is what
I think that the Jokerification factor is in play fully here for the Rams backfield. I would try to find a way not to mess in redraft leagues, not to mess with the Rams backfield. Since Henderson looks like he is going to be active. If he is a surprise inactive, that changes everything, and Michel becomes a really, really solid play. That doesn't seem likely.
It also just seems like a situation where Henderson is active, and then Michel gets the first 15 touches, and Troy and Joe are looking at each other saying, well, they talked about Henderson this week.
or it'll just be Jake Funk. But what Denny said, just condensing what Denny said, Cooper Kupp is not DFS chalk. Sony Michel is DFS chalk, folks.
On the Joker scale, we're not at a Joaquin Phoenix, but we're at like a Jack Nicholson, right? There is very real Joker potential, but the team did show us, right, in the first week and at the start of the second week, that Darrell Henderson ideally is their premier running back. Now, do they have to contend with his middling health status? Yes, but I think like Denny said, I think given what they showed us, like their true honest selves in week 1, you have to at least assume they're going to try to get Darrell Henderson going before Sony Michel. And if Darrell Henderson doesn't look good because of the injury, or if they're worried trying to limit his touches, sure, Michel comes in. But Henderson's probably the better talent. He's definitely the talent they have identified. It's just a matter of how comfortable they are with his health.
For reference, I'm in a managed league with Evan Silva, and we were texting each other mid-show just now, trying to figure out Sony Michel or Nyheim Hines, and we're starting Nyheim Hines, a PPR RB3 essentially. So that's kind of where our confidence level just for week 4 is with Michel as the situation sits itself out.
Speaking of confidence level, speaking of hazing, Kyle's the young guy on staff, so we're going to haze him with by far the most difficult situation, a Monday Night Football game time decision for a 2-down running back and Josh Jacobs. Kyle, can season-long players, who drafted, they probably weren't excited about drafting Josh Jacobs, but if they drafted him, he's their RB2. Is there any way you can wait and see on Josh Jacobs for a game against the Chargers defense that has been bleeding a lot of ground production? Or is this another way you just kind of got to cut your Josh Jacobs losses again this week and wait until week 5?
Yeah, I'm cutting my Josh Jacobs loss. I'm not even 100% convinced that if he comes back fully healthy tonight, that they don't still give Kenyon Drake 5 targets and Peyton Barber 10 carries. Like, that is certainly within the range of outcomes. Gruden even talked about he's not afraid to give Peyton Barber, I think he called it like the primary work.
He loves the guy.
That wasn't the context of being asked what Jacobs' status was, so I would assume that was in reference to if Jacobs is inactive. But I still think there is a very real potential that Peyton Barber goes from being I didn't know he was on the Raiders week 1 to being maybe a 5 to 10 carry kind of guy. And on top of that, you obviously have the downside risk of just taking a straight up 0 if Jacobs isn't active. And you're up, what is your upside? That you get 16 carries in a target? Like, that's not upside that you're dying to chase over getting a 0. If it was Dalvin Cook in the late game of the day and you're like, you know what, I'm going to ride or die with maybe 30 points, you're just not getting that by playing Jacobs. It's so much risk with so little reward.
Daigle, I'll ask you real quick from a DFS perspective. Say it's a 1-game slate or like a 2-game slate, the night game slates, so Sunday night, Monday night. Is there any contrarian appeal to Josh Jacobs at all? Or because the Chargers do get burned on the ground, but is Kyle just right? Is there not even any point in messing with this, even in DFS?
If Jacobs is out, I genuinely think it's going to be a 3-headed committee moving forward. I think Peyton Barber showed John Gruden, maybe not us, but Gruden enough in the last 2 games, including last week, 26 touches. In the fourth quarter and overtime, he took the 3rd down role from Kenyon Drake because he was the better pass blocker in that game. And I think he's done enough to where Jacobs comes back and he remains a touchdown or bust option just on fewer touches, which is like basically what Robbie Anderson is. It's very scary right now.
Well, we've talked enough about RB2s that we don't even want in our lives. It's time to get on to the viewer questions. We're going to begin here. Kind of a tough one, actually. I was going to say not a tough one, but it is Denny. Chase Edmonds, who has kind of been operating as like the poor man's Austin Eckler so far, but finally kind of having an eruption spot today. It's a tough Rams defense, but such a high-end scoring environment. Or David Montgomery is getting another start with Justin Fields, and we'd have no clue what to expect there. Which way are you going here?
I'm going to do what everybody should do and put my trust in Matt Nagy to make the necessary adjustments. I mean, I feel sick about it, but yeah, I'm playing Montgomery here. His peripheral stats look really solid headed into week 4. You have to assume that the Bears won't do what they did last week and create like a supermassive black hole into which all fantasy value goes from Allen Robinson and Montgomery and everybody else in that offense. I think there will be adjustments. I think Montgomery will see the ball a lot, and the Lions defense is ripe for the picking. They got lucky last week against the Ravens. Marquise Brown dropped 2, arguably 3, I would argue 3 touchdowns. Lamar Jackson could have gone nuclear. The whole Ravens offense could have scored 1 million points. I think this is a really, really soft matchup for Montgomery. I'm going with him.
Edmonds just has to score literally outside the 20. Even in looking at James Conner's box score last week, you see 2 touchdowns and you think, okay, he played an increased snaps. He played a season low in snaps, just 37% last week. He just gets all the carries inside the 10, and that's how he provides value. So it's just really tough sledding outside of PPR leagues with Edmonds since he is the primary pass catching back.
Yeah, our start-sit stool here is pretty comfortable with David Montgomery, and I have Montgomery's RB17, Edmonds is the RB19, so I have them close. I think Chase Edmonds is going to continue to claw. It's going to be slowly, but claw work away from James Conner, but it's too early to say that's happening for real. And David Montgomery, in a sane world, he's going to have running lanes open for him by Justin Fields. If the Bears basically run any style offense other than what they ran last week, this should be good for David Montgomery. So I do agree, as painful as it was after last week, we kind of got to go back to the David Montgomery and just hope that the Matt Nagy doesn't want to get fired anymore. And Denny, real quick, the Congressional Commission investigation into Marquise Brown, it was 3 drop touchdowns, not 2. So the official word was that it was 3. We're going to go to Steven Wilson. 2 interesting guys here, because 2 like borderline RB1s, but 2 guys both battling injuries. Jonathan Taylor had the knee. He was limited. Antonio Gibson had popped up in the injury report with a shin injury. Both teams kind of in chaos right now. It's a must win for the football team today. It's a bad spot for the Colts on the road. Daigle, what is your feel here?
Let's see. Jonathan Taylor is just tough because it wasn't just Quentin Nelson going to IR, which is obviously the biggest deal among their offensive line. It was also Braden Smith, their starting tackle, out, and they also lost their starting center midweek to an injury. So now we're talking about one of the lower scoring totals on the board, and Jonathan Taylor being forced to use his talent, which he can, but with minimum help, basically, in a slower paced game. So I'm still starting Antonio Gibson right now, especially given the fact that we've seen it in weeks 1 and 3. If the Colts are behind, and we don't think they're going to get behind by 2 scores in this game, but if they are for whatever reason, it becomes the Nyheim Hines show, and that's concerning for an RB1. Whereas Gibson at least will be getting the touches and carries and a sprinkling of targets no matter what. So I am playing Gibson over Taylor.
I think our projections kind of bear out what you just said, John. Gibson is probably just the steadier option. Few players have as much upside as Jonathan Taylor. I mean, he's a guy with 220-yard upside. Antonio Gibson, despite having that 73-yard touchdown, probably still doesn't have that upside. But everything about him is just a little bit steadier. And yeah, we've got him projected for like 2.5 more points.
Taylor is a low price on FanDuel, and I came into the week thinking like that was going to be an awesome play. But even if you look at our DFS toolkit, he's gone down progressively throughout the week because he's been given more uphill battles to climb. And so it just doesn't seem as friendly of a situation anymore.
We need to go to Kyle soon, but I got to go to Denny because this question basically seems rigged for Denny from Island Boy Gamers. He wants to know Hunter Renfrow or Emmanuel Sanders in PPR. So we're just talking some guys we're probably all starting. We will not all be starting Emmanuel Sanders and Hunter Renfrow. Of course, for Denny will be. But Denny, how do you choose between – I know it's like picking kids for you, but how do you choose between Hunter Renfrow and Emmanuel Sanders?
It is like picking kids. You took the joke right out of my mouth. Yeah, so – I'm going Manny Sanders here. He's seeing an 18% target share, I believe, on an extremely heavy, pass-heavy Bills offense. They're going against Houston with a massive total at home. I think you're playing your Bills. Like, get your Bills in the lineup. Especially if it's a question like this, where I think that you just lean toward the Buffalo player. I'm going with Sanders.
Do any of us have that overly paranoid fantasy fear that the game just won't be competitive enough so the Bills won't get their numbers, Kyle? Or is there any reason to fear Josh Allen in redraft or DFS? Like, just we can't be stupid and overthink it. They're 17-point favorites, essentially.
Yeah, Bills are like the perfect team to not be worried about if they're going to blow out their opponents. There are teams that you do have some tail risk of if the touchdowns break towards the running backs in the first half of the game, there will be no more touchdowns because they're fine sitting on, a 28-10 lead. The Bills are not that team. They are among the league leaders last year and the start of this year in pass rate over expectation because Kansas City and Tampa Bay, they don't have any desire to establish the run, right? They know their optimal route to scoring points is to continue passing, and they know the way to stop comebacks is to just keep scoring, just keep pouring it on. So they pass all 4 quarters, whether or not it's a close game or a blowout. And we saw that last week. That was perfectly fine that Washington could not put up points against Buffalo, and it didn't matter. Josh Allen kept scoring for all 4 quarters. So some quarterbacks, I don't think it's a reason to sit a quarterback ever because for them to get there, their team has to score a lot of points. If their team is scoring points, it usually is going well. Sometimes you just run bad on touchdowns and you don't get there that way. But for a team like the Bills, that's not even really a risk I consider.
And they're still passing the ball at nearly a 60% clip with a lead. So I have confidence they would be the team to just run up the score no matter what.
Daigle, we're going to stick with you. Johnny5 on YouTube. He needs a flex between the aforementioned Emmanuel Sanders or Javonte Williams. So tell him who you're leaning here. And just tell us your thoughts then on Melvin Gordon versus Javonte Williams. The Broncos' first real game where we might like they have to like kind of put their money where their mouth is with their backfield touches. But Melvin Gordon, he's questionable. So who are you starting here, and what are your thoughts on the Broncos backfield?
It generally comes down to what type of fantasy player you are, because Javonte's safer with the guaranteed touches. Melvin Gordon, alongside him, has been averaging 14 touches per game, the same exact number he averaged last year in the 10 games he played with Phillip Lindsay. Having said that, we saw what happens when Emmanuel Sanders continues getting his current target share down the field, because he is the team's not only starting number 2 wide receiver, but deep threat as well. Bill's also the highest team total on the board, so I understand wanting pieces of that, even with a player like Zach Moss, who is touchdown or bust essentially. But putting them in your lineup, Dawson Knox as well, Denny, are tremendous plays, honestly. So if you want the ceiling, it's Sanders. If you want the floor, it's Javonte Williams. It's odd because I think it would be a week. Finally, the Broncos have a competition after playing the Jets, Jaguars, and Giants the past 3 games. Now it's an offense that they have to put their foot on the gas against the Ravens to match and win. But I'm timid because of last week's fourth quarter fumble from Javonte Williams on the 1 yard line, in which they then just gave the ball back to Melvin Gordon afterwards. I think it's going to be the same timeshare anyways, but I would admittedly be higher on Javonte this week if he didn't have that one fumble, giving him less confidence with the coaching staff.
You basically talk about the one thing he couldn't do in garbage time was lose. Even if he got the ball punched out like the 40, the coach said, whatever, he's trying to put something cool on film at the goal line. There's no forgiving him.
And honestly, with Emmanuel Sanders, I think the floor is like, 2, 3 for 50 yards. And I think you could take that with a running back, since the running back's floor is like, 16 carries for like 50 yards, and you're looking at the same exact production.
Being a rookie, shouldn't Javonte Williams be inactive for the next 6 weeks?
He should.
Belichick. Belichick would absolutely cut this man already.
I mean, that game, it's a late game. I mean, it is going to happen. He's a healthy scratch. Just get him in your lineups right now. Javonte, that's a joke. Denny, I'm going to ask you this impossible one. Bob Linville on YouTube. Nyheim Hines, Mecole Hardman, or Noah Fant? I think this one isn't impossible, but which way are you leaning here? 3 similar guys at 3 different positions.
Wow. Yeah. So we are, Fant's matchup is pretty nice. Lots of targets going to tight ends against Baltimore. Now, granted, Baltimore's played, Waller and Kelsey, so we have to take that into account. There's also Albert O, who sort of siphons off just enough to make Fant not an elite play. Of course, you're not looking for an elite stat line here if you're going between Fant, Hardman, and Hines. And this is a long way of me saying I'm going with Hardman.
Interesting. That would have been option 3 for me.
Well, you hate Hardman, though.
I do. I first thought the easy answer was Fant. They're like, no, actually, it's Hines. At no point in my mind was Hardman the easy answer for this one. But
he's
it wasn't
playing enough snaps. I like Hardman this week. I mean, you're probably not going to have a safe floor, but I like Hardman among those options.
It is the ceiling option. Kyle, we're going to get into some quarterbacks from ccbru on Twitch. Ryan Tannehill or Sam Darnold? I think this one maybe got easier with the Titans receiver injuries, but what are your thoughts? Again, we're talking about real tests. It's kind of the first real test for Sam Darnold, who's going to have to match points with the Dallas Cowboys.
Yeah, I would say it got harder with the injuries, because I would have, have you told me 2 weeks ago, I would have just been like, oh, well, Ryan Tannehill is just he's clearly, he is what Sam Darnold aspires to be, the post-case breakout, right? But now with having basically practice squad receivers as his top options, and Sam Darnold has one of the better trios and plays in a game that should be wildly exciting. You said he has a test ahead of him. The test is not against a difficult defense. It's against a great offense. That's the test. Can he stand up to par when par is Dak Prescott? And in terms of fantasy points, that's perfect. It's exactly what you want. So I think I'm actually going to take Sam Darnold here, just because I have no clue what we're going to see from this AJ Brownless, Julio Jonesless Titans offense. They could legitimately pass 14 times a game. That could be, or 14 times a game until those guys return. They could look sort of like the Bengals did when they weren't passing the football a lot, 18 attempts for Joe Burrow. And you're like, unless he scores 3 touchdowns, even 2 might not be enough. So, oh man, I guess I'll take Sam Darnold here.
Daigle, where are we at on the Jets potentially covering today? Are we backing off this? We kind of both dabbled in this on the podcast midweek. Is there any back off?
No, we're still full speed ahead here. Nothing has happened that has given us confidence for the Titans. Now, of course, this could backfire, and Derrick Henry. I still expect Derrick Henry to get 30 touches today because they have nowhere else to go. But I have so little confidence about everything else between the offensive line, the injured wide receivers going on with that team. I genuinely think it's a good spot for the Jets' famous last words.
Robert Saleh, if you're listening, stop Derrick Henry. They just do that. Just do that, and you're good. You're fine.
By the way, I agree with Kyle. Sam Darnold over Ryan Tannehill. It's a probation week for Ryan Tannehill. I just can't trust, even against the Jets. I cannot trust Ryan Tannehill this week. We're going to throw to Lawrence Jackson now. We're getting in. Buys are almost starting. Injuries are piling up. It is trade season, as John Daigle might say. And Lawrence, he's got some advice on trades.
It's only week 4 right now, but we got a whole lot of injuries happening. So you know what that means. It might be time to make some trades in your fantasy leagues. However, there's ways not to go about making a trade. Don't make no offer. They say no, and then you start trying to tell them what they need. Like, bro, this is my fantasy team. Don't tell me what I need. Yeah, your receivers, they look like they lacking a little bit. Then let them lack. Here go another good one. Oh, you got that player just getting all them points on your bench. You just gonna let them ride on your bench anyway. And let them ride. Rather have them getting points on my bench than getting points in your starting lineup, partner. Then they be like, they don't send no offer. They say, well, what do you want for this guy? What you mean what I want for this guy? Send the damn offer. I'm either gonna say yes or I'm gonna say no. I just want this dude because he's on my favorite team. I'm just trying to stack him up with his quarterback. What the hell that mean to me? They offer like all they bench players for like Derrick Henry. Say no. Oh, Derrick Henry ain't that good anyway. Start talking up all those players on their bench that they trying to trade. They so good, then keep.
I feel like Lawrence is subtweeting about 10 people I know.
I vote that as my favorite Lawrence video because it definitely speaks to the heart of like truly trade should be outlawed. Like they're a social construct that we shouldn't allow because people are so miserable in every way that he just mentioned.
He hit on like the 10 archetypes of the 10 traders you meet on your way to heaven or whatever. That was really
those
good.
are like the 7 trader rings of hell.
Yeah, that's a good point. Denny, it looked like you had some thoughts. Are you one of these guys he's talking about?
No, but I mean, every time you get a trade offer, you look at it, and within 5 seconds, you're either deeply offended or you're laughing. I mean, there's no in between. I don't think I've ever gotten a trade offer where I'm like, that's fair. That's fair. even when I'm in industry leagues and we all know each other, and we're not trying to offend each other, I still get offensive trades.
Yeah, but the only way if you really want to complete a trade, this is going to be very offensive to Zoomers. You got to get on the phone. The powers of persuasion are much better and people get kind of uptight and nervous. Like they don't want to say no. People want to say yes. So if you really want to close the deal on a trade, get on the phone.
This is like social psychology. Like you have to make them feel uncomfortable, right?
You
want them to be sweating. When you see the sweat run down their forehead, you know you have them cornered in a situation where they simply must fight or run.
But it needs to be a passive-aggressive uncomfortableness, kind of. So this is my advice. Get them on the phone. My advice to Alex200 lowercase o on Twitch from John Daigle. Devin Singletary, James Conner, or Tyson Williams at PPR. This is a tough one.
God, this is tough. The issue is that Le'Veon Bell is going to be active for the Ravens today. So I think they're going to have all 4 running backs available, which decreases Tyson Williams' value in the short term quite substantially. So I actually lean. Oh, is it Singletary? I think it's right because PPR like doesn't matter for Connor, who literally just doesn't run routes and doesn't get targets. He's literally last on the team in routes run.
Will Devin Singletary catch enough passes today? Like, are they gonna be checking down the Bill? These Bills Texans game. This is the kind of game I get so in my head about. Like when there's this big of a spread. It's like, well, they're not gonna check down to Devin Singletary. I was thinking Tyson Williams. Just because I feel like there's the most upside there, but there's probably also definitely by far the most downside. Basically, Alex, we have no clue. I don't know why you asked this. We're not experts. We're not paid to make these kind of decisions.
I think it's a really, really tough Singletary's safer since Connor is touchdown or bust.
That makes sense. Singletary is definitely the safest. I will say that by far.
Now, we say safe because 3 points is safe among these options.
Yeah, so that is a good point. Just bank the points with Singletary. If for some reason you're in desperation, like ceiling chase mode, go Tyson Williams, I'd say. Denny,
yes.
Alex, Trey Sermon, Courtland Sutton, or Chuba Hubbard this week, who we're not getting as many questions about as I might expect. Maybe he's just set and forget RB2, I guess, at this point.
It's Chuba, man.
It is Chuba. I'm sorry.
Come on. Good grief. Courtland Sutton. I like Courtland Sutton. If the Broncos are going to do well today, if they're going to score points, gain yards, it's going to be through the air. Sutton has become a target dominator in Jerry Jeudy's absence. I know that Jimmy Smith is back for Baltimore and everything, but I do like Sutton among these options. I mean, Sermon and Hubbard probably give you maybe a slightly better floor. Maybe, I don't, not enough for me to bench Sutton for these two.
I would start Chuba, just for the record, folks. We're gonna establish the Chuba line here, Kyle. Sorry to immediately undermine you, Denny. That was rude. Diontae Johnson's 10 targets or Chuba Hubbard's 15 to 16 touches in half PPR.
I'll take the 10 targets because I am barring health, which feels like always a qualification for Diontae Johnson. But right now, as of before the game has started, he's healthy. Who knows how that will pan out 4 snaps into the game, but we're going to assume he's healthy because the team says he's healthy. He's playing, he's starting. Diontae Johnson's 10 targets were just like a lock whenever he played a full game last year. And Pittsburgh has no choice but to continue to play that style despite, obviously wanting to establish it. Whereas Chuba Hubbard, I haven't projected as a good RB2, but there are error bands around that are pretty wide that could include Royce Freeman playing the third downs or whatever. I think Chuba, don't cancel me, please. God, I need this. My family needs to eat. Chuba Hubbard. He did play the bulk of the snap, 73% after Christian McCaffrey went down. He did look like he was running as both the red zone and the 2-minute drill back, but they didn't have any time to play. And it's very possible that given the foresight of playing without Christian McCaffrey, you put Royce Freeman in that role. So I am just sure Diontae Johnson, is that 10 target type of player. I think Chuba is that RB2 type player, but I am less confident. So I'll go with what I'm more confident in.
Daigle, most people are not going to be in position to bench either one of these guys, and Terry McLaurin or Chris Godwin. But it is interesting. It's a must-win game for the football team. Taylor Heinicke is still kind of shaky. Chris Godwin going up against the Patriots. We don't know what Bill Belichick's going to be serving up for Tom Brady this evening. If you have to choose one of these guys, who are you choosing between Terry and Godwin? You are muted, John Daigle.
I'm going McLaurin. Still a team high in target share with Taylor Heinicke under center, who has been the QB12 and QB9 the past 2 games. This game has potential to go over. I've seen a lot of sharp people going under on it, but both defenses have played so poorly that I think there's a real chance for a shootout. Not to mention the Falcons are still bottom 3 or top 3, I guess I should say, in receptions allowed to opposing wide receivers. So I think it's just an amazing spot for Terry McLaurin this week.
That makes sense. Denny, your RB1, Cordero Patterson or Jalen Waddle, and Ethan's PPR flex.
I'm going Waddle over my favorite running back.
Yikes.
Waddle was peppered with targets last week, and really fits what Jacoby Brissett does, which is throw short. So we're going with Waddle. I think Patterson's a fine play, especially if the Washington-Atlanta game kind of shoots out like John was just theorizing. But I like Waddle. I like Waddle more than most, I think. I mean, especially in DFS, actually.
This is a tough one for whoever wants that. I mean, I guess it's not that tough. Myles Gaskin. Do we feel any better about Myles Gaskin, John, after the Dolphins at least cut the committee down to 2 backs instead of 3? Or are we still looking for reasons to bench Myles Gaskin?
Nope, I would feel more confident. Now, they used Malcolm Brown a la James Conner and Chase Edmonds, giving Brown all the touches inside the red zone. But I'm still confident in Myles Gaskin, given he has the pass-catching role, assuming that Savon Ahmed is healthy scratched. Was he healthy scratched again? Did someone spot that? I was hoping.
I'm actually not sure.
I do not believe he was. That was my game, and he wasn't.
Well, he was active last week and played 0 snaps. So
yeah.
It's okay.
He's functionally a healthy scratch.
I would say if we knew for a fact Jacobs was out, I would still go Barber in this situation, but we're probably not going to get that. All we've heard is he's very questionable, which seems like you would think doubtful, but it seems like everyone else is taking that as he's going to play. So we're not sure at all.
Real quick, to Peyton Barber people, probably 14-team leagues. I mean, there's a lot of 14-team leagues out there. You got Peyton Barber off the waiver wire like a week or 2 ago. You have like no good options. You're like Cole Kmet, like Quintus Cephas world, basically him or Peyton Barber. You just plug Peyton Barber into like your final flex spot and just kind of not worry about. Because John, I think kind of laid out. We don't think he's going to take a 0 even if Josh Jacobs plays, right? Peyton Barber.
No, I don't think he's taking a 0 at all.
So yeah, I think we're still. If you're in a desperate situation where you can't wait till Monday night in a deeper league, like say a really deep 12-team league or 14-team league, I think you can still put Peyton Barber in there. Maybe just reasonably hope for a touchdown. That's all you're hoping for, is you're hoping for a touchdown, basically.
Pat's talking as if you have to play in like a 16-team league to want to play Peyton Barber. Yet both Denny and I have many teams that started off with James White and Giovanni Bernard, and we're like, oh man, I'd kill for 5 Peyton Barber carries.
That's a good point. That's a window into our sick world. We'll stick with you for this one, Kyle. Sony Michel or Michael Carter? Do we feel any better about Michael Carter, who the Jets, it was condensed last week to 2 men because Tevin Coleman was hurt. Are we feeling any better about Michael Carter yet? Are there any indicator lights that we can start to trust Michael Carter or no?
Well, you named the big one. It was the benching of Tevin Coleman, who throughout the offseason supposedly ran as the 1A, but that was always doomed to fail because he's Tevin Coleman, and his career outside of one good season in Atlanta is, doomed to failure. And now he seems to be even, last week, I believe he outcarried Ty Johnson on the season. They're running about even in terms of targets. So given that he is a 1A on a bad team who maybe has some pass catching upside, but to me, I am more of the opinion that Darrell Henderson is significantly better than Sony Michel. And I think at best you're hoping for like 8 Sony Michel carries and a touchdown. Maybe he picks up a target. I just don't believe in Sony Michel. I believe in Michael Carter as a talent. They're giving him a reasonable role. Your only downside is that this offense is just truly a crime against football. But touches are touches, I guess. I will take who I think has more touches in Michael Carter, but I think he significantly outtouches Michel.
We're going to throw to Mr. Zero RB, Denny, for this one. Are we giving any thought to Le'Veon Bell, or is this just like an emergency active thing, you think?
This is good timing. That's what I'll say, because Mike Garafolo from NFL Network reported a couple minutes ago that Latavius Murray is expected to lead the Baltimore backfield, I guess he'll get the first crack at leading the backfield. Oh, no. This comes out a week after it looked like the Ravens were trying to establish Devontae Freeman early in the game against Detroit. Very weird situation. I was going to mention earlier about Tyson Williams. I don't think you can play Tyson Williams outside of the deepest formats this week. Feels like the Ravens are out on Tyson's season in on Latavius' season. It doesn't matter that Le'Veon is active. But Latavius, you could do worse, I suppose.
Man, you're holding on to Tyson, though, and betting on a very smart coaching staff, seeing he is the superior back among the 4 they're going to have active.
He's the superior back, but what even the Ravens coaches, he just doesn't do the little things right, maybe, yeah, and he's gonna get little things to death.
He's fumbled twice already, and he can't block and pass pro. But anytime he touches the ball, he just zooms. He's awesome, but he doesn't do the important stuff.
So those are hard to classify those as little things. I guess those are rather big things. Daigle, Diontae Johnson, or CH. Basically, how are we feeling at CH? He survived the 2 fumbles for a 100-yard game last week. A tough front in the Eagles' front 4, but not a tough defense. How do you feel for this question? How do we feel about CEH?
CEH got there with 100 yards last week, but Darrell Williams did play season highs in snaps, getting season highs in carries and targets as well. Overall, though, it is a positive game script and a good situation now that we know the Eagles are down 4 or 5 starting offensive linemen. And so I just believe, given what we know about the Eagles defense, how they have only stopped Garoppolo to this point, I think it's a terrific situation just to get CH back in there as still a middle of the road, low end RB2, knowing he's going to get 15 to 18 touches just fine with Patrick Mahomes in this offense. We should have confidence in him.
Ooh, yeah. I guess that's fair. That's fair.
I'm sorry. You asked me, though. I should answer the actual question.
Yeah.
You asked me what is my confidence in CH. That's my outlook of CH. I'm starting Diontae Johnson over CH.
There we go. That makes sense.
Without Claypool, remember, we're taking out 15 targets and negative game script from last week for Claypool, who entered the starting lineup. And now we get Diontae back, who it didn't matter what Claypool did, still had 22 targets in the first 2 games. So we take Claypool out, and you would think it only increases, whereas it stays safe with double-digit targets. So I'd much rather take that, since the Steelers literally can't do anything but pass the ball. Roethlisberger's almost a lock for 300 yards and 2 touchdowns because he literally just dumps it off 2 yards in front of him. And then Claypool, Diontae, Najee Harris, they just run forward as far as they can. They have no other offense whatsoever, which makes it good for 60 attempts and volume in the passing game.
And I actually don't think you need to really be concerned about Diontae Johnson's knee, by the way, because he was listed on the injury report a lot last year. And just every time he played, it just didn't matter. I'm like, well, they're going to have to dial him back a bit this week. He barely practiced, then he just get 19 targets.
And he was full on Thursday and Friday, so we're not worried.
Yeah, we're not worried about Diontae Johnson this week. Kyle, Chuba or DeAndre Hopkins, who's going into a tough matchup with Jalen Ramsey, didn't look great last week as he's battling through the rib injury. Is this one of these situations where we get cute with Chuba Hubbard, or do we not get cute? We start your studs in DeAndre Hopkins.
Even in standard league, I'm still playing DeAndre Hopkins here because, sure, it's been not the ideal start for through 3 weeks for DeAndre Hopkins, but he's doing the thing he kind of gets, I would say, at least for fantasy, gets chastised for not doing, is scoring like a lot of touchdowns. He's actually operating as like a very significant part of the red zone attack as well. So that probably helps make up for the loss of the value of his receptions in standard. And would it surprise me if we see one more week that is not ideal of Hopkins, and then Chuba comes out this week and gets 20 carries and 6 targets, and I change my tune next week? No, it's very possible that Chuba plays exactly like Mike Davis did last year, and the offense is better. However, not knowing that that is the case yet, I don't think I want to leap to the conclusion that you're starting Chuba Hubbard, who I have ranked as like a middling RB2, over Hopkins, who, even the differential in standard, I still have as a wide receiver 1. So I'm going to take Hopkins here. It's close because of the fact that it's standard, but the touchdown equity that Hopkins, just playing in an incredible offense as well, makes it Hopkins for me.
Hopkins also full practice on Thursday and Friday. Banged up the last 6 quarters, but I believe he's going to be back at full strength this week.
A really quick question just to you guys. Do you think DeAndre Hopkins is looking less imposing physically? I think DeAndre Hopkins, since the second half of last season, has looked less imposing physically, and it's maybe the injuries are finally kind of taken. He's played through so many injuries in his career. I don't know if anyone else has noticed this, or is it just me?
I've never watched a football game, so I'm not sure.
Let me find that column in my CSVs, and I'll let you know if I can see it.
He had a 25% target share in week 1, and then banged up the last 2 games. That's when his target share dipped to around 15%. So we're just banking on the same volume and health of week 1, thinking it goes into this game, which totals has continued to rise throughout the week.
It's just a real life observation I feel like I made, where like he's retreating further like into the Edelman zone kind of, because I think maybe he's just not as explosive as he used to be, but I'm probably just totally making it up. Denny, hard question here, benching one between Damian, Javonte, and Tony Pollard. And so who would you bench, but also take this as an opportunity to talk about Damian Harris.
Right.
Really tough Bucs run defense, but do the Patriots have better options? Can they really go away from Damian Harris? Who are you benching, and what do we think about Damian Harris?
All right, so Patriots running backs coach Ivan Fears, one of the best names in the NFL, said this week that Ramondre Stevenson had made great strides in practice after being doghoused for two weeks. It looks like, I think that there's a good chance that Stevenson, following James White's season-ending injury, will be active tonight on NBC against the Bucs. The Bucs are a nightmare, obviously, for especially an early down running back like Damian Harris, who has virtually no PPR upside. I think it's an easy call here. I think I am playing Tony Pollard and Javonte. I think Damian Harris drafters could be in for a tough situation if Ramondre Stevenson is active and get some of that James White role. Because Ramondre Stevenson can presumably become a three down back in that backfield. I believe that all off season. So tonight could be the beginning of that. I don't want to say downfall for Damian Harris, but it could be not good for Damian Harris.
I mean, Ramondre, he's not known as a pass catching back, but unlike Damian, he's not known as a pass catching zero. So it is a very intriguing situation. And even the Patriots, I feel like, might try to force the issue there because you can't have Brandon Bolden be your pass catching back. I guess maybe you could have JJ Taylor be your pass catching back, but I can't get past the fact that he's like this super undersized guy, but they did draft him. So I guess watch out for JJ Taylor. But Ramondre Stevenson was a guy we were super excited about in the offseason. And yeah, it is time to see this could actually get put into practice, the Ramondre Stevenson hype.
Yeah.
Cam Loops on Twitch. Who wants this one? Daigle or Kyle wants to know, pick one in standard: Javonte, Rondale, Fuller, Pollard, or Dillon.
I'll take Javonte here, splitting half the carries on a team that has been a relatively successful offense. Haven't been tested yet, but also the Baltimore defense doesn't look as good as they have in years past. I think it'd be more of a conversation if it weren't standard, but the rest of these guys outside of Dillon, like especially like Pollard, Rondale, you're specifically targeting for the reception equity they bring. And Will Fuller, I'm not sure what he brings to the table because we saw Jacoby Brissett last week have one of the lowest ADOTs in a single game over the past few years. I think the last time we saw someone as low was ironically, I believe, Josh Rosen with the Dolphins like 2019, but he is just a check down fiend. And that's the opposite of what you want from Will Fuller. So, ruling him out, Pollard and Moore, who are really only bringing reception value to the table, and that's not valuable in standard. And Dillon, like, it's just like a backup or something. I'll just take Javonte Williams here, banking way more touches that are closer to in value as receptions because of the standard.
I think that's the correct spin. Yeah.
Does anyone have a differing Will Fuller take? Like, are we just screwed basically if we thought we were getting an upside wide receiver 3 in Will Fuller? And like, can we even trust him as a wide receiver 4 right now?
We need to see it this week. Colts have registered the fewest pressures in the league. I expect this to be the one game where Jacoby Brissett can be upright. And he's had 89 throws the past 2 games and has averaged 4.3 yards per attempt. So is he going to throw downfield? I don't know, but that's what it's going to come down to. If Will Fuller continues to just get, 4 to 6 targets, some downfield, then yeah, he's not the talent like Diggs or Hopkins that can elevate himself in this situation.
Well, okay, so let's put. Are we at least starting Will Fuller over NWI? Are we at least starting Will Fuller over NWI? I say we are. I mean, I think we know brainer. In that game where the Dolphins were in comeback mode last week, they finally started dialing up some downfield shots when they had to late in the game. I mean, any quarterback who's managed to make an NFL roster can hit Will Fuller on a deep bomb. I feel like it's a no-brainer, Will Fuller, but does anyone else have a contrarian take on our beloved NWI?
I will say, for whatever it's worth, Josh Reynolds and Chester Rogers and it looks like Marcus Johnson are both active. So I think there are going to be 2 more available receivers for the Titans than there were last week. So NWI's like routes run, target share are probably not as safe as we assume.
Yeah, I think you can't trust in even in like a 14-team league. I would be searching for other options. I think NWI was like a 1-week folk hero who's going to burn you bad.
I think he's fine for deeper leagues since we don't know really the role Reynolds and Johnson are going to play since they've been out the first 3 games. But at least like their bodies are available there to take up a couple routes.
Denny Robert on YouTube has been killed by injury. Is this a set and forget situation with Trey Sermon, hopefully, or PPR? Is it maybe J.D. McKissick or your beloved Mecole Hardman?
Well, I have to stay consistent, right? I mean, it's Hardman and Sermon again, and I that's what it was. I think the one you threw me before where I went Hardman, so it's Hardman.
I think you got to cover your bases here. Just cover, just try and place a few chips on a few different spots. Someone will be mad at you. Someone will be happy. Like, yeah, you nailed that pick, man.
You know what? You're right, Kyle. That's actually really good advice. But yeah, I mean, I would go with Hardman there.
Well, Denny, it's funny because you fancy yourself a rankings adjuster, and yet you didn't adjust the ranks just now. Mecole, you stayed very consistent and started Mecole both times, but you actually did adjust the ranks a few times this week. I take it, correct?
I did. Yes,
we're gonna see the most rankings, the situations that just demand for an adjustment here from Denny Carter.
Hey everyone, this is Denny Carter with NBC Sports Edge with another edition of Adjust the Ranks. Today we start with Tom Brady, whose voice sounded awfully raspy at a press conference this week ahead of his highly anticipated return to Foxborough to face his former team, the Patriots, which you can see, of course, on NBC. Is Tom Brady under the weather? Is he gutting out a week of practice, not feeling 100%? If so, we must adjust. And adjust up, way up. Brady uses anything for motivation to vanquish his opponents. We've known this for years. He'll do it this week. If he is indeed sick, Tom Brady has 500 yards and 7 touchdowns in his range of outcomes this week against New England. Trust me, the Patriots hope he's not sick. Adjust your ranks. After drilling a record-breaking 66-yard field goal last week to beat the Lions at the buzzer, Justin Tucker's Madden rating has been raised all the way to 99, reportedly for a limited time. apparently Justin Tucker is going to have to break the NFL record for longest kick every week or two to keep his rating around there. Now, we must adjust, and I'm adjusting down. I don't want to, but we have to, because there's almost nowhere else he can go after getting all the way up to 99. Is he still a good play this week in Denver? Perhaps. Is he an elite play? I don't know, because it can only go down from here. I'm sorry to report. I take no pleasure in saying this. We must adjust. Once again, this is Denny Carter with NBC Sports Edge, reminding you to adjust the ranks.
Yeah, Denny, I don't know how Justin Tucker wasn't already a 99. It's people like you out there with hipster kicker picks, like Younghoe Koo was probably a 99 instead of Justin Tucker. And I would say he's going to break the record again today. The thin air of Denver, we're getting a 69-yard field goal from Justin Tucker. Just put that in the books. That is happening. We're getting more NFL history this week. And I don't appreciate your efforts, by the way, to manufacture a Tom Brady flu game narrative. Is that what you're trying to do for Tom Brady, to compare him to the true GOAT, MJ? Denny he's stunned speechless.
Oh, I was going to say, I don't think Denny is trying to manufacture that narrative. I think Tom Brady is trying to manufacture that narrative, right? Nobody wants Tom Brady to be in an underdog position more than Tom Brady. Like, there's never been anyone who is like so self-jaded, right? Not like he just maybe, I don't know, whatever. But in terms of the NFL landscape, he certainly doesn't deserve to be jaded. He's about as good as they come. He might be the GOAT, some would say, and yet he still fancies himself to always be at odds with the world. So I think Tom Brady wants that narrative.
I don't think you understand, Kyle. Someone once doubted him in 1999. Tom Brady.
While Denny is coming back, though, to talk his kickers before we get out of here, I do want to quickly say we usually talk about survivor pools. This week, if it wasn't already obvious, it's the Bills. Now, in higher stakes survivor pools,
contrarian.
They isolated, like in Vegas, the holiday games. And so Thanksgiving slate, for instance, is only 6 teams, and you have to pick one of them. You can't pick the Sunday games. So my team had to save the Bills against the Saints for Thanksgiving, and we went Bengals instead. And let me tell you, it was not fun having the Bengals on Thursday night. Ooh. But nonetheless, we got there, since the goal is to go 20-0 anyways in survivor pool. So Bills this week. Also, quick DFS thought for everyone while Denny comes back is that you can keep, on FanDuel anyways, your running back like Sony Michel or someone for the afternoon game, even if it's one of the higher price guys like a Trey Sermon or whatever available, and then also the flex option open. And then worst case scenario is if you play Terrace Marshall for $5K over one of the 5,300 receivers, KJ Osborne, Rondale Moore. There are quite a few you can sneak in there that are viable in this slate. You actually get that extra 300, and it allows you to slate swap from Sony Michel or Trey Sermon at 58, 5,900 to use check worst case scenario at the stone minimum. And then in your flex, get up to DeAndre Hopkins or Tyler or DK Metcalf in like a skinny stack. So that's the way I'm playing it. I want to take 2 of those slots in to the afternoon, knowing that if I'm behind and Terrace Marshall doesn't hit, even though I think he's such an awesome play today, he's going to come in under rostered in an overstacked game that is prioritizing every other piece around him. Then I get to late swap if Marshall doesn't hit. Worst case scenario, we're using use check and then a high priced receiver. No big deal. I'm confident in that.
Denny adjusted his ranks all the way to heaven, but he's back. And who are the kickers of the week, Denny?
Yeah, it was Evan McPherson, which didn't go well. It didn't go fantastic.
It almost went well. A wide right, but it went well.
It almost did. You're right. Yeah. The process was right. More and more are saying this today. So Aldrich Rosas is available.
Canceled
in every league, and he fits the kicker process really well. In a game that the Saints should dominate, should see lots of positive game script. Rosas has not been good this year, but that's not stopping us from streaming.
He's not been good ever, but
he was good for a stretch, I think, against the Giants. And then you're firing up your regular kickers. I had questions about Tyler Bass this week. You're starting Tyler Bass every single week.
Are the Bills settling for field goals today, Denny? I mean.
They're making so many red zone trips that it doesn't matter. You're starting your dynasty kicker 1, as I've called him.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to score 40 points, so I'm guessing that Tyler Bass will, contribute to that scoring in some way. Anyway, don't question yourself with those sort of issues. Tyler Bass is a plug and play. I will say people are getting rightfully fed up with Harrison Butker week after week. I give you permission to release Butker and try to stream the kicker position. You shouldn't have drafted Butker in the first place. That was the mistake.
Well, we're going to do some rapid fire to end the show here. Daigle, Courtland Sutton, or Allen Robinson? And just real quick, how are we feeling about Allen Robinson?
A little better. I would think they haven't mentioned it, but I would think with Bill Lazor calling plays sneakily behind the scenes, it's going to be a better outcome. Plus, like, we've done this so long, we know how this goes. Like last week's performance was a mirage, if not expected in a bad spot against the Browns. This week, so much better. You're back at home. You have the whole week to game plan in your own training facilities, which I know is a narrative, but also it's really true. It's a true thing against a terrible Lions defense that can't stop anyone. The strength of the Lions, their offensive line, nothing else among that group. So I actually do think we should have more confidence in Justin Fields as a QB2 and Allen Robinson, at least as a middling wide receiver 2 this week.
Denny, do we have any fear with Lamar Jackson's back injury? Matthew Stafford's a QB1 too, but are we still going with Lamar's dual threat against Denver?
Yeah. I mean, you have to, because Lamar is the Baltimore rushing attack now. They're not going to establish with anyone else. It's not a fun matchup at all for Lamar and the Ravens offense. But yeah, I'm going Jackson here.
That's probably the safe play here. We had I lost the question, and I wanted Antonio Brown. Antonio Brown, Kyle, or Michael Pittman in half PPR. He's third in line for revenge on the Patriots. Can they really? Oh, no, I guess he's second in line now that Gronk's out. Yep. So is AB an easy call over Michael Pittman in half PPR?
I don't know if I'd call it easy because Pittman is seeing such a high percentage of his team's passing attack, but I just have so little faith that his team's passing attack in a low total game with Carson Wentz as his quarterback, who doesn't really look functionally that much better than he did last year. I'll just take Antonio Brown. Sure, you're getting fewer targets, but the loss of Gronk could also open up extra targets, and the loss of Giovanni Bernard as well. Like I expect we saw 10 targets, I believe, from Gio last week. I think Leonard Fournette is an okay pass catcher. I don't think he has the same ceiling as a pass catcher that Gio does. So as the target tree condenses, the number 3 receiver in Tampa Bay becomes even more valuable. Obviously, he's got a great connection with Tom Brady, and they're both super talents. So I'll just take the talent premium over a little bit of target share, given that I think it deserves a pretty heavy discount coming from Carson Wentz.
Daigle, Emmanuel Sanders, or Christian Kirk, and rank the reserve Cardinals wide receivers with Kirk, AJ Green, and Rondale Moore.
Oh, it's it's always going to vary for people, especially for me because
it is.
Yeah, Denny said Rondale Moore had -4 air yards last week. I got offended because it's -10. Get it right. It's DeAndre Hopkins, and then it is. Gosh, I still
know who it is.
Christian Kirk, and then it's. I guess it's AJ Green, and then it's Rondale Moore. Like I still play Rondale Moore though, knowing what he can do on the fewest routes in the team. Like he's the league winner outside of Hopkins among that group, whereas everyone else just kind of hangs around spiking weeks. But for me, is it Sanders over Kirk? I think it's Is it?
I think so. I mean, you're taking it looks like number 2 receiver, especially in terms of air yards, on a Bills team that is probably going to end up passing more than passing more. Right. And you've said it all along throughout the week. They have the highest implied team total as well. Cardinals playing a fun game, but they're not projected to score a ton of points. Bills are literally supposed to boat race other teams.
Yeah, they are projected for 8 more points. The Bills are, even though the Cardinals total has risen 2 points, like nearly a field goal throughout the week. So nice. There's a lot of increase coming in on their team total.
Denny, real quick, this is the final question for Nick on YouTube. Wide receiver 3 problem children, Hollywood Brown or Brandon Ayuk?
Oh, that's difficult. I think it's Brown. I think I'm going back to the Marquise Brown. Well, he, disastrous week 3. I get it. He was catching soccer balls in practice this week. I think that is a big. I should have done adjust the ranks.
Big deal.
That.
Yeah. Frankly, you're fired for not doing that. But
it was a huge missed opportunity. I'll fire myself for that. Anyway, I think the Niners can dominate and could and will dominate on the ground against the Seahawks, who have allowed the second most rushing attempts through 3 weeks. I don't know if that leaves much opportunity for Ayuk. I'm going Hollywood.
And that does it for today's show. Thank you. You're stumping us quite frequently. I know we're experts. You guys are asking great questions. You have true dilemmas. Hopefully we did our best to help you solve them. Just another great episode of a good football show, Fantasy Kickoff, served by Applebee's. We'll be back at the exact same time next week and every week, noon Eastern. Check out all of our stuff on the site all week, all of our podcasts, all of our articles. So many good things. So thanks so much for joining us, and good luck in week